being able to describe your job by the number of hours between which you show up to do it is like a very depressing idea, right? Like the first thing that comes out of your mouth is I have a 9 to 5, now I do X. And I think that is indicative of the problem. Is like you people aren't, or we just haven't structured the world in a way where people are pursuing something with like a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, it's just like I'm doing this to learn this or to become this, like to garner this skill. Like corporate culture just puts you in this. I can completely empathize with this idea of coming out of college, landing in this environment and being like, shit, this is all there is.
All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. We've got the NIA gang here together today. Trung Phan, Jack Butcher, Bilal Zaidi. Happy Halloween, boys. And for the people only listening, Trung looks like an absolutely ridiculous person right now. Trung, what's going on with the outfit, mate?
Are you guys familiar with the Little Prince book?
Little Prince? No, I don't think so.
Prince?
No, I don't think so.
Children's book. All right, I don't know. It was famous.
Wrong person.
Famous around our parts. But the Little Prince, there's a guy called the Aviator in it. That's me. I'm the Aviator. That's it. I look like a complete knob right now. On the people, if you're on listening to this on Spotify, Apple, stay listening to it. Don't go to YouTube.
Man, that's proper gear you got on though.
Yeah, what's that headpiece
from?
Well, I don't know, man. My wife. Well, my question is this: why isn't Jack dressed up, man? You got kids, bro.
Get the eyes on. Get the eyes on.
Get the guys on.
It's turning into a Theo Von podcast now, man. Jesus Christ!
Look at the entire time.
Come on, wait. Let's just get a zoom in here, Rafa. This is the thumbnail for the week.
Well, you're gonna laugh because you guys know how cheap these costumes are, right? So like these aren't like even. I can't even see. I can't even see you guys.
Incredible, man.
All right, hold on. Let me ask. Okay, quickly. I mean, this is gonna come out Wednesday, so Halloween have already happened. So let me ask, what are you guys doing tonight? Jack, are you doing anything? Bilal, are you doing anything?
Yeah, we do. There's a little parade where we are that all the kids get. It's like they go absolutely ape shit here for it, man. It's like proper, planned. Streets closed down. Police do it. Yeah, it's proper.
Oh, the police are out just to keep the kids in order. Do you know what I mean? The kids going wild.
Bilal, 10 years ago, what would you have done on Halloween versus what you're doing tonight?
Let's think. What's the year? 2023, 2013. Yeah. That's the year I moved here. I did lean in because I'll be honest, I'm not a massive fan of dressing up of random stuff. But then once I moved to the States, I was like, I got to just go lean in because people go absolutely ham here. I will say this is a bit of a flex one, but what was it? Heidi Klum, the
you went to Heidi Klum's Halloween party?
2013, yeah. That first year I got here. That was mad. I saw Ice-T. Her publicist was a friend of mine, or still is a friend of mine. But yeah, he big up Jesse. He used to be the publicist for who's the Brazilian Adriana Lima. All of the
Yo, hold on a second.
Yeah, it's crazy. Good friend to have. Yeah.
Pump the brakes here. Bilal, you went to Heidi Klum's Halloween.
Yeah, it sounds better than it was. It was fun. I was dressed as the Pharaoh, obviously. I already got the tan, and then I'll tell you another story off camera because I was gonna go off the deep end.
Hold on a second. What's Halloween like in the UK? Because you mentioned that it didn't go that crazy. I'm guessing.
I think Jack's crowd went a bit harder than me because I was keeping it clean. But Jack, you were going hard with the Halloween stuff, uni days.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. Oh, uni days was just no
full cancellation,
boys. Yeah. It was. Yeah.
We can't talk about some of these stories, bros.
Well, there must have been some crazy outfits.
Yeah. Cardiff in particular was just a very loose city, so you get some
loose city is an incredible phrase.
Okay, hold on. Go for the Jack. We're married with kids, bro.
Can't using the word loose and city.
Okay, but hold on a second. Let me throw something out there. Okay, let's pin this. I got two thoughts. But first one's a question to follow up with you guys. Bilal's obviously got the best story with the Heidi Klum thing. So this year, I'm guessing, Bilal, you'll be way more low-key.
No, I'll be at home. I'll be home doing nothing. Yeah, keeping it easy.
So what is the best costume any of you guys have ever done?
Oh, so we all went silent there. This is not Trunk's internet. This is just us thinking.
No, this is a real thing. I
Though
mean, most
Trunk's
of them,
internet might have
I
gone,
couldn't get
sorry.
away with it now. We used to do ladies' night on Halloween, boys.
Ladies' night. Wait, so you dress up? What, you be wearing dresses?
As a lady, yeah.
David Beckham style, wearing a sarong.
Used to be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
October 31st, boys.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Trunk's gone.
Did you do? Yeah, Trunk actually froze, but he'll come back in. We'll just keep it going. But was there what about New York? Did you go pretty hard in New York? Would you? Because it gets kind of cold by this time of year. So I have some memories.
Yeah, I went to a few,
cold.
but I went to a few, but no, I can't remember doing anything that mad.
Did you ever go to sleep no more?
SantaCon.
Oh, SantaCon is stupid as hell. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Just people dressed up as Santa Claus.
I didn't do it. I remember that era though. The
Sleep No More.
The Sleep No More era, man. That was.
I think that was the next year I went to 2014. And for people who've never been to it, Sleep No More is like this thing in New York where you go. It's kind of like a interactive play. Like you can walk around this crazy building and there's actors kind of doing. It's kind of based on Macbeth, but they're doing this crazy scenes, and you're just walking in and someone's jumping in the bath, and then someone's just like banging someone up in the other corner, and then like hitting them. Sorry, that's the wrong word to use there, but and it's just this weird kind of artsy thing, which is fun when you're like 25.
Follow them around. Follow them.
But now it's like my worst nightmare. I don't want to be walking around that place right now. But yeah, that's a pretty fun one. But anyway, we'll wait for Trunk to come back in. I'm sure he's got a good one. But and then what about with the kids now? You're just going to be doing regular stuff?
Mate, the Sesame Street IP is permeated our household, so that's what we're doing.
There we go. Okay,
Elmo, all right. Cookie Monster, Oscar the Grouch, Big Bird.
There we go. All right, Trunk's coming back in. We've lost half the audience already, but we'll get him back. Here we go. One second. Let's wait for Trunk. There he is.
The glasses.
The glasses is ridiculous.
Yeah,
Sorry,
keeping
boys.
the glasses.
I
on
wish
is
we had
such a
the
big
recording
commitment.
of us actually coming on the call, because I wasn't recording at the time, and it was like,
we weren't ready for that.
I feel I've let down the listeners without a costume here.
Are you dressing up tonight though? Yeah. What were you gonna be?
I'm supposed to be Oscar the Grouch.
Oh, you said, all right, cool. There we go. Easy one.
All right, boys. Sorry about that. I was just gonna say my best costume was I was living in Vietnam. Obviously, you hit up those surplus fabric stores. I just bought one of them old communist outfits, which was like, looking back, maybe not the best move.
What's an old communist outfit? What's that mean? Just a cloth,
I had a communist general, like you know those crazy North Korean pictures where they all have the medals. Like I had one of those get-ups. I was like 10, 11 years ago. Idiot. I was an idiot, right? I'm sure my parents weren't too happy about that one. Not the biggest fans of the Viet Cong, my parents.
All right, what about this one? What's the we can cut this if it's boring, but the best Halloween outfit you've seen someone else even do? Because I'll tell you one. I saw someone in 2010 with a full-on programmable like Game Boy or like some sort of game, and then you could like play the game. So he's just walking around like a lemon, walking around in Dublin.
That guy was not getting any action.
Everyone was around him because it was like Tetris or something, and he was just pressing all the buttons. I was like, this is some geeky guy just absolutely smashed it. All right, if we don't have an answer, we can keep it moving. All right, Ralph, you can cut the last bit if we need to. All right, let's go. So do we want a meme of the week, or we got one of the 7,000 Vince memes from last week? I think we at least have to comment on it as meme masters that you guys are.
At this point, everyone saw that Vince McMahon meme. It's like this video of him doing a conversation. He gets really choked up, like he can't even finish the thought. And I was talking to Jack about this. Vince McMahon is the meme Hall of Fame at this point, right? I don't know, like if Rafa could pull it up. Here are the Vince McMahon memes. The one where he has all the cash and he's smelling the money. Like there's that one. There's the one he's in the chair. There's like 4 frames, and each one he's getting progressively like crazier in his reactions. I mean, he's doing this on purpose. He knows he's a meme, right?
The walkout where he's like swaggering out.
So I mean, we could throw it up. There's so many of these here. But do you guys have one handy? We could throw it up before we get into the show.
I'll find one.
All right, before that,
Jack
Bilal,
shared
why don't we
about
talk about-
17, so
Let's why don't we
let him
throw
pull
what we're
it
gonna
up.
talk about today. What's on the
yeah,
menu?
yeah. So while Jack's pulling that up for the Halloween special, we're not talking about Halloween at all, except for that beginning segment of the show. We're gonna be talking about the Gen Z 9 to 5 rant. You guys have probably seen the video of this young lady who was having a bit of a breakdown on her way home, or just as she got home, just realizing that the 9 to 5 life is real. So we might share that video. Actually, it's like a minute long, so for people who haven't watched it, we can then comment on the discussion around that. Then we're going to talk about some edge of the internet stuff, the meta chatbot of famous people. It's quite an interesting area. And then
We can also tap AI regulation because I came out
AI
on
regulation if you got something on that. And then to round it out, we've got the Hasan Minhaj. There was a hit piece on him, if you want to call it that by now. I think it was like a month ago, right?
yeah, and then
about
he
his
came
emotional
out with
truths.
He came out with a minute by minute breakdown of the
Very
video.
Hasan Minhaj style, and we're going to talk about it because it's actually very NIA in terms of comedy and like the ethics of that, but also him coming back at the media. And then if we've got time, we'll talk about Costco's $9 billion clothing business and Nollywood's The Black Book, which is
breakthrough,
yeah, which is Nigeria's Hollywood. So, Jack, you've been working eagerly there. Oh, give me 1 second. I can. Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Dad. So for the listeners, it goes, Dad, did you sell Bored Apes at the 158th floor? And it's just the video of Vince McMahon, like, sadly saying he did not.
Did not, yeah. Well, add in, what is it, the Toads for me there, whatever they got up to with from the NIA special for the listeners.
Oh, man.
That is a good one. Jack definitely did sell close to that. So I don't know what. Jack, do you remember how much you sold your Bored Apes for? Like ETH-wise? 150.
Nah, not 150, but all right.
But
man, I'm set. The thing about that meme that is just unbelievable is the dad prefix that got attached to it that made it this like that contextualize it as this historic, like, I'm looking back at this moment and I massively regret it. It's just so good. It just compacted so much. I was showing Cecilia the other day. She was like, did not find it remotely as funny as I did, but I was like, shit, like 30 variations on it. And it's just killed me, man. It's been the best one I've seen for so long.
And I've seen it across every category. It's like in the on Instagram, the music, the hip hop meme guys. I've seen sports Twitter and sports like sports
gets
Bible.
Everyone gets it.
Seen the lad Bible.
Except for Celia and probably my wife. My wife, every meme I've ever shown my wife, she's just like, yeah, not funny. I think they're
the worst is when you're trying to describe a meme. It's like describing a funny video. You're like, oh, there's this thing of Vince McMahon, which is essentially what we did on his podcast for the 99% of people listening. But all right, anyway, but incredible meme. We do cover memes on the pod, so I think that's definitely a top 5 meme of all time, right? Like that
it's Vince
level.
McMahon's like this is all relevant, people. We're talking about memes and ideas. Vince McMahon's up there. He knows he's a meme, right? Some of these people know they're like Donald Trump knew he was a meme. Like he knew.
He's like I feel like Vince McMahon is at a inception level of memes. Like he is created a meme factory. That's his business, right? Like the people WWE. And the stories and the things that he has attached his whole life's work to all revolve around like exaggerated human emotion and the cartoonification of the human
Trump
experience.
Will tell you that he borrowed a lot of the WWE's lessons during his presidential campaign. Because remember, he's in the people don't know.
He had a cameo on there too, right?
He's in the WWE
the nickname thing.
Yeah, he's in the WWE Hall of Fame. The nicknames, exaggerated emotions, like Jack just said. Kayfabe, the entire idea of kayfabe for the listeners that don't know.
Kayfabe is.
Google
is so
kayfabe.
good. You gotta break it down.
Go on, Trump. What is kayfabe? Explain that.
Okay, kayfabe for the listeners. You should Google because I'm gonna butcher, but that's Kayfabe. But it's just this idea that everybody knows that wrestling is fake. Like almost everybody knows that wrestling is fake, but you still watch it. You still want to believe the drama that's happening, and you are still emotionally manipulated by the drama, even though you know it's all fake. This is what. And this is the idea. Like 90% of reality is like this, though. It's like politics is largely kayfabe. Like Democrats versus Republicans, their platform's like 90% the same. They're never going to cut Social Security. They're all going to do defense spending. They, there's a couple of wedge issues which they will disagree on, but a lot of that is just to be quite honest, for show, so they can win re-election with their like
drum
really
up the crowd.
Yeah, with their
Trung
crowd,
is so
right?
based right now. I love it.
Dude, I'm just like, no, but like we got ourselves
and he's dressed up as this guy right now.
Yeah.
Let's
take this out of context in a couple months.
Trung was ready for war in this outfit right now.
Don't watermark this with a pumpkin or anything. Just let it run like this. Yeah. Hey, Trung, I was also going to ask you about the heel turn or the heel character.
Oh,
exactly.
Remember, we talked about that for ages. I love that.
Well, Jack.
Explain the heel.
Let's explain what it is. A heel is a villain, right? Is the villain in a storyline, and it's just like anything. Villains turn into heroes. Heroes turn into villains, and people love. What you don't understand with WWE is these guys are writing these stories like 5 years in advance, right? They're writing out 5-year narrative arcs. It's incredible. That's why when you see like I have friends that are. I used to watch WWE when I was in my teens, early teens. But I forgot about it.
Man.
But there are people
SmackDown.
30, 40, 50 years of SmackDown.
WrestleMania.
Raw.
Tables, ladders, and chairs. It just is incredible. When you zoom out.
Boys. There's
the Dudley
so
Boys
much,
and the Hardy Boys.
So much mental capacity still reserved for WWE.
When Shawn Michaels betrayed his the Hardy, he was Hardy Boys, right?
I don't remember now.
Anyways, guys.
I'm pretty sure.
Brick, the one thing I would just add to that is, I'll tell you who gets the heel idea better than most right now, the Paul brothers and the whole boxing world. Which is funny that I even put them just in the boxing world because they're obviously not just boxing world, but they understand like Jake Paul versus Logan Paul, or when look at like Mayweather. Perfect example. He knows what did he used to say? If you love me or hate me, you're still paying to watch me, or something along those lines. And that was his strategy. And it's obviously.
Okay, you know what? I love that we're not done yet. We're not done. We are not done, people. We thought we were gonna do Edge of the Internet episode. People don't understand. Like we went up.
It's the WWE episode.
Together. We're just like, what are we gonna talk about today? We're about to talk about 30 minutes about WWE, man, which we should have done a whole episode anyways, right?
We should just be calling WWF because we're OGs with it.
So let's talk about Muhammad Ali. One of the great, you mentioned all these fighters, they're all aping after Muhammad Ali. No one understood how to make people watch them more than Muhammad Ali, right?
Oh, so
He's
good.
a great rhyme creator.
Absolutely.
He was Thriller
one-liners,
Manila,
man.
right?
Can you imagine him in this era? Oh my God.
Dude, but here's the thing. Guess where Muhammad Ali got all those things from? He himself was a massive fan of professional wrestling. A guy was called Gorgeous George. Google Gorgeous George. It was a villain in 1960s professional wrestling. And Muhammad Ali's like, I learned everything I knew about trash talking from Gorgeous George. Because Gorgeous George would make people like what Bilal said about Floyd Mayweather. Whether you loved or hated Floyd Mayweather, you're paying to watch him. Gorgeous George was the same. Whether you loved or hated Gorgeous George, you were going to watch. Well, Muhammad Ali was largely a hero in the 70s because of what he did with. Actually, no, he was a villain, right? To half of America, he was a villain when he
refused to go to Vietnam, right?
Vietnam, yeah. People, I'm about to go on a fucking rant here. Okay, this is what you wanted. We're going on a rant. You know, you see all these athletes and celebrities and people that are quote unquote making a stand in the year 2020, that they're going to speak out. And a lot of it is just pure virtue signaling. Muhammad Ali, let me frame this for you. He was the world champion of boxing. He was in his prime. He knew that by the letter of the law, if he did not go to Vietnam, he would go to jail. He did not care. He said, I'm going to go to jail. I don't care. This is what he said. I ain't got no quarrel with the Viet Cong. No Vietnamese person ever called me an N-word. That's what he said. He's like, my racial justice issue, my fight is in here right now. I have brothers, brown brothers and black brothers that are not being treated correctly in America. And he's like, I'm not going to Vietnam. Like, Muhammad Ali used to go to college campuses and argue with a bunch of Northeastern white liberal kids. He's like, he was an animal, dude. So my entire point is this. No one will ever match Muhammad Ali. No one was ever willing to give up more. Like this guy was willing and ready to go to prison for what he believed. And you see, and this is the most famous, one of the most famous athletes in the world. All these people nowadays, they're kayfabing. It's all virtue signaling. No one was willing to give it up like Muhammad Ali was, and this is why he's the greatest of all time. And ran.
Respect. Okay, love it. Vietnamese Trung coming through with some history there as well. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our agenda, boys. Let's get straight onto it. I'm going to be sharing my screen here. Let's just share the 1 minute video because a lot of people wouldn't have seen it, or some people wouldn't have seen it, so it's better not to ignore that. 1 second, share screen. So this is the 9 to 5 rant.
I know I'm probably just being so dramatic and annoying, but this is my first job, like my first 9 to 5 job after college, and I'm in person, and I'm commuting in the city, and it takes me fucking forever to get there. There's no way I'm gonna be able to afford living in the city right now, so that's off the table. Like, fucking duh! If I was able to walk to work, and it'd be fine, but I'm not. So it literally takes me, like, I leave here, like, I get on the train at 7:30, and I don't get home till, like, 6:15 earliest, and then, like, I don't have time to do anything. I want to shower, eat my dinner, and go to sleep. I don't have time or energy to cook my dinner either. Like, I don't have energy to work out. Like, that's out the window. Like, I'm so upset. Oh my God. Nothing to do with my job at all, but just like the 9 to 5 schedule in general.
I think you guys get the idea, yeah? So
being in the office 9 to 5, like,
I could stop the share. But that was, I mean, so, and I'll just read out what Jason, All In Pod, you know, investor in Silicon Valley, got a little stick for this, but he said, "Oh, Princess, I'm sorry you had to commute and work and have a job and everything. It's like so extra." All right. So, I mean, this video's had probably, I don't know, but hundreds of millions of views probably by this point. If you take TikTok and, you know, all the press that's been around it, it's been a massive talking point. It kind of feels like, remember that dress where people like, what color is the dress? It's that level of division I found. And so I'm curious. I mean, Jack, you also kind of tweeted about this. I don't know if we want to share this.
Well, hold on. Before you show Jack's tweet, let me add what you said there. When you say division, there's two parts that are divided here.
Yeah.
Part one is the Jason from All In perspective. He's basically roasting her for complaining about what last 3 generations since basically the 9 to 5 corporate America has been instituted that everyone's done, right? So that's one side. The other side is people being like again, our boy Adam Singer, who I know listens to this podcast, he was very much in her arena in the sense of like, you know what, commuting does suck. There have been many studies, and Adam has written about this, studies showing that commuting, I think there's a number, it's like X amount of minutes a day of commuting over X amount of Y amount of time will actually decrease someone's life. So I actually hate commuting, so I totally am empathetic to that. So those are the two sides, right? It's like the 9 to 5 is archaic. It is. It was meant for the farm. It was post-farm, early corporate America, factory life, right? And then there's the side of like, well, everybody's kind of done it. Like if you told immigrant parents about the 9 to 5, like they literally, like my old man, and I'm sure similar to you guys, old man, is like 9 to 9 is like a good day. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so like, there's those two sides. So here's Jack's thing. Jack, why don't you describe what you put up as a kind of response, how you feel fall on those kind of spectrums?
Well, actually, when I listened to it again and after I posted it, I was like, I'm spreading a little bit of misinformation here because she doesn't actually dislike her job. It sounds like she dislikes commuting.
Yeah.
My take was way more about.
I felt it was not just commute. I felt like she's kind of talking about. I don't know. Maybe she wasn't specifically talking about the job, but I think it was the whole experience.
She does call it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. She calls it out and said, if I didn't have to commute, it'd be fine, whatever. But the thing I wrote was way more about like most 9 to 5s are a product of just ridiculous bureaucracy and administrative functions. Like if you look at those charts of like American healthcare, you've seen that chart, right? Of like the amount of administrative staff and costs that is inflating over the course of the last 30, 40 years. Middle management, box ticking, blah, 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 blah. So my point was way more about that. And then the other thing I thought after I wrote that was being able to describe your job by the number of hours between which you show up to do it is like a very depressing idea, right? Like the first thing that comes out of your mouth is I have a 9 to 5, now I do X. And I think that is indicative of the problem. Is like you people aren't, or we just haven't structured the world in a way where people are pursuing something with like a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, it's like I'm doing this to learn this or to become this, like to garner this skill. Like corporate culture just puts you in this. I can completely empathize with this idea of coming out of college, landing in this environment and being like, shit, this is all there is.
Yeah.
That
yeah,
is
fair. I like the distinction,
hell.
and thanks for calling it out, because I didn't realize that.
No, that is a very important
like
distinction.
I've even grown to contradict myself around the things that I, you know, when I was 16, 17, thinking about going to university, and the things that I could have studied versus I did study, you know, like the liberal arts, the philosophy, the like less tangible practical applications of like education, writing those off as opposed to like getting a marketing degree or something like that. Because the week before this, there was a marketing thing went viral. Did you see that?
No, what they
Another
saying?
girl on TikTok that said, I've been applying for jobs for 3
I did
weeks.
see that. Yeah.
And I can't get a job in marketing. And
I've done the work.
The starting salary.
Yeah.
Right. The starting salary is 60 grand or whatever instead of 200 grand. And it's just like, again, my first visceral reaction to that is like, that's dumb, just keep trying. But the bigger problem, or if you zoom out and look at it, it's like the fact that you can pay 60 grand to get knowledge that isn't worth fucking $60 is the problem, right?
Yeah.
That's the issue.
The next graphic.
Yeah.
Yo, that is something Balaji would say. We were talking about our boy Eric was on the podcast last week. Wait, that what you just said is literally something that Balaji would say.
It's a mad
to clarify, is this
concept
she paid 60 grand, you're saying, or she's saying the starting salary was 60k?
Oh, more than that.
Clarify.
More than that,
for her,
probably.
She
for her
paid more.
degree.
For a degree, yeah.
She didn't use any numbers around what she spent, but she went to school in the States, so she's in multiple 5 figures of debt, I'm imagining, if not 6. And she said she worked in a sushi restaurant, and that makes her more money than an entry-level marketing job.
That was it. Okay, yeah.
And that's the contrast. And like, yeah, the only way to learn marketing is to do marketing, right? It's like there's the Balaji quote in that book that we should have brought Eric up on. The MBA to learn how to do business is like something to do with riding a bike. The quote, I need to pull the quote up. It's like a very poignant,
specific,
comparison between these two ideas.
Yeah,
but that illusion that you come out of school with experience in a field like that is actually incredibly harmful. Like you're probably better off having a psychology degree and then going into a marketing job where you can actually think about what marketing is from first principles versus learning shit from people who've never worked in marketing. Most likely, if you go to I'm sure if you go to a top tier school, you get people visiting from, but if you're like the median marketing education is not churning people out who are good at marketing.
Well, it's the saying, right? If those who can't do teach, that's the chirp that people make of a lot of professors, which isn't that. Hey, it's not all true. I've had some good professors in my life.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
that's a criticism.
It's not a great set of incentives like altogether, right? It's just like, even if you want to practice medicine, you go and do these. You have to go and work in a hospital for a year or 2 or whatever else. So, like a lot of schools do have it right, where do your internship.
Yeah, well, medicine
come back
you learn
and do
for
something
several years,
freedom.
and then you do it in a hospital, and then you specialize. But but I think while you're pulling that up, to break this down into 2 parts. One is the 9 to 5 kind of discussion around Gen Z, and I think Gen Z is a part of this because it is about kind of a promise, and like this promise for a generation. We had our own version of a promise, American dream, whatever you want to call it. Theirs is slightly different. They also had a pretty rough time with COVID. Like a lot of them were going through university, that once in a lifetime experience, and doing it on Zoom, right? So like there are a lot of things, and then outside that, the financial state we're in. So I'll just quickly share what I initially thought, and sorry, the second part was what you just said about education system, essentially around, are we actually churning out what is needed for an economy / is education really just about learning something so you can go do a job, or is there, you know, more to education like you described before? So I'll say when I watched that video, my initial reaction was kind of like the gut reaction, which a lot of people would have had, is like, all right, stop complaining, like, you know, we've all been through it, whatever. And I took a second and I realized, like, okay, first of all, I don't know what's going on in this girl's life, right? Like, it's kind of, I shouldn't be judging her. Like, it sounds like she's just moaning, but like, there's a lot going on here. Do you know what I mean? Go on, Jack, what are you going to say?
I was just going to interject and say both of these people are incredible marketers. They just don't realize it, right?
Yeah, that's true. They probably learned something at uni either way. But just to add to that, I was, you know, I realized that, okay, we've all had that kind of moment where you go to work, and whether it was like your first day at work or 5 years in, like I can just describe mine. I had a pretty good ramp into work life and I was enjoying myself. And at one point I realized, like, oh shit, this is what I thought it was going to be like, and that doesn't exist, or like or it exists, but it's outside of what I'm currently doing. And I need to leave or whatever. And so there is this like moment of clarity where you're like, oh, I was promised this thing. And so I'd say a lot of this younger generation, they've been told, follow the rules, go to university, kind of what we were told, like learn some skills, then you'll be able to get a job, and then you'll be able to afford your rent, and maybe one day you'll be able to buy a house, all those things. Now we can break each one of those bullet points down and say, do we really need to live in a world where everyone can buy a house or not? Is that really a right anymore? Is it just really you need shelter? And then you can say, should you be able to earn 6 figures out of college, or is it just like you need to work your way up there? So you can break that down. But I will say, I think a lot of the responses to Jason were like this isn't it, Jason. Like, this is like a young person. You're like someone who's very, you know, successful in many ways. The community note says Jason hasn't had a 9-to-5 job since 1990 something, or it was a funny thing there. So I think both reactions are completely valid, but that's kind of how I thought about it after a while. And so I asked you guys, like, what did you think beyond what you said, Jack? Trung, was there anything else you thought initially when you saw that as well?
I love how Jack teased it out. There's the commuting part and the job part. And the commuting part is actually related to like the work from home argument, right? It's the idea, listen, if you can walk to work, you're basically working from home. As in the sense, if you can walk to work and you can like come in and out of the office, that's effectively the same as working from home, right? In the sense of like, you don't have to block off a 10-hour part of your day to be away from the things that you want to do, right? She's talking about working out, I guess spending time with her friends, whatever. I get that, man. Bilal, I also love how you framed it. You're talking about there's a day, we've talked about me working at Scotiabank, right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
There's a day when you're doing your job, when you're just like, oh, this is not for me, right? Obviously, in a number of jobs I've done, that was like apparent within the first couple of days. Yeah, man, she's right. But I totally do get the other side though. It's like, man, you guys know how hard your parents worked, right? Like, I know what my parents had to do in North America as refugees, and maybe it's not fair, right? The whole point is that every generation is supposed to get better. Every generation is supposed to have a better like head start. But it's like we talked about David Goggins last week. You know, you got to be hard, right? It's like you need to. You got to be mentally. You have to have calluses in your brain. Like you have to have calluses, right? And
you've been listening to this at the gym too. Easy, David Goggins with Rocky in the background. Is this what you've been listening to?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. That's what I've been doing. Right. But yeah, I'll tell you what is as we were talking about, which is, I mean, this is getting a little bit into the sadder side, but you guys, we talked about it. Matthew Perry passed away sadly from Friends.
Yeah.
But there's a part of that story which is extremely sad, right? Is that he wanted to be well, let me preface all this by saying I'm a huge Friends fan. I'm a fans of Friends. I watched all of it in the late 90s. Me, my brother, my sisters, like some of the happiest moments, like watching TV, being like pure laughter, pure happiness, right? Like Chandler and Joey, that duo, incredible,
yeah,
right?
That friendship, yeah. Yeah.
But the sad part of the story is, and he released a book last year. I haven't read the book, but I've seen excerpts. He got so famous so early. And he's not the only one this happens to with famous people. He has so much money. And you can go, there's this idea of like, what is your purpose in life, right? Like he had so much money, didn't really have to do anything. He could have just never done. And you can do stuff like drink and do drugs your life away. And he talks about it openly, right?
He spent
nearly $10 million on rehab for himself, right? And if you saw photos of him in the past few years, he never really looked healthy.
Yeah, he got addicted to, was it painkillers or something?
Painkillers, Vicodin.
Vicodin, damn.
Alcoholic. He said he didn't remember the last 3 years of filming Friends. Yeah, crazy, right?
That's wild, man.
He got clean. But there's also this sense, and the reason I bring it up is this. There's two extremes, right? Is like the extreme of the antiquated 9-to-5 system, where it is a little bit archaic, right? You, like Jack says, you don't need all these administrators sitting in office for 10 hours a day. But the other side of it too. Wait, go ahead, Jack.
No, I don't want to carry on. I'll say after you.
No, I was just going to say the other side of it too is as we're entering in a world, I mean, we're going to talk about AI in a bit. There's this whole idea about UBI, right? Oh, if AI is going to do everything.
Universal basic income for people who don't know.
Universal basic income. AI is going to create so much wealth.
Income, sorry.
Right? Is that universal basic income, everybody's going to get whatever. The idea is that universal basic income, there's going to be so much surplus wealth created that nobody will have to work. But here's the problem. If you don't have to work, the extreme of it is look at what happened to Matthew Perry, who himself will say this is what happened, right? He never got married, never had kids. And not to say that he didn't have purpose in life. He spent a lot of the past decade helping other alcoholics, right? He said that he found the most joy he's ever had in his life was if somebody came to him is like, I have an alcohol problem. Matt's like, I can try to help you break that, right? So like, but the whole point is that that's an extreme where if you have nothing, right? If there is no structure, if you have nothing to forcing function, it can also go really bad.
Definitely.
So I don't know what you guys feel about that. Is like, that was something I was thinking about reading about Matthew Perry because it is really sad. This guy had everything, literally everything. And he himself said it wasn't enough. You know what I mean? Well, he had everything that we think you would want. I think he had the life in your early 20s you think you would want, right? Yeah. Fame, access to the most beautiful women in the world, never had to work, so minted. But did he actually have everything, right? And I think that's the question.
Yeah. And Jack, do you remember what you were going to say before we answer what he just said there? Because you
sort of went into it, Trung. This idea of the ability to do your job from home, especially at the beginning of your career, to me feels like an indicator that you are not far away from being replaced by a script of some description. Make sense? It's like you're literally you're key logging. You're able to do something without being physically present. There's something about that just like prefaces your automation out of the organization. Versus
you don't have
like
the human is what you're saying. You're not doing the human interaction, which is
that, and your input is literally just keystrokes into a computer.
That's a great
like,
framing. Yeah,
something's going to be trained on that eventually, and like there are things that the intangibles of, Bilal will know this well as well, the like politics within an organization. Like I had a like cavalier attitude towards that at the beginning of my career. When you get to like a little bit further, it's like, no, you're stuck here until you figure out how this person like unlocks the door to the next place. Yeah. And that's the argument that's also the boomer argument, right? Of the like, you need to be in office and build relationships and do this, and this. And I'm like, that's how I came up as well. So I might be talking out my ass. I don't know. Maybe there is like a future where everybody can just work through a laptop and build incredible stuff.
No, I think a lot of people, Jack, are with you. I think you look at a lot of these companies that are rolling back work from home. I mean, people made a great point. Like, if you're in a fully remote work environment, you're not dude, how about how much learning actually happens in person for a lot of jobs, right? Just those 30 minutes at the cooler where a guy 10 years ahead of you just fucking downloads information into you, right? Like, it's not for every job. Like, clearly for me, I don't want or need that. But for a lot of roles, that's exactly what you're describing is necessary. That's why all these companies, dude, work from home, like 24/7 work from home, that was a ZERP policy, man. It was like labor had the power, labor had control, but it's like there's certainly a middle ground. But I totally see the value of these companies saying, no, you're going to be in the office. And I would never, that's not for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the quality of the time people have in that environment too. Like, I commuting in New York for an hour to an office, like the odd day working from home was good, but like I used to have a very good time at work. And that's like
made it worthwhile. Yeah,
it was fun. It was like you met lifelong friends at work. Like you spend so much time with people that they're like you spend a lot of time working and not working with the same people. And that's also, I don't know what graph I'm referencing here, but the epidemic of people not finding a partner, not having friends out, like not building friendships, like that really has been a bridge to like your adult life for a very, very long time, and just literally cutting it off is also a really sharp way to change behavior. Like when I came to New York, if I was working from home in an apartment in New York and I just moved there from the UK, for example, I would you just be an island. You wouldn't have, like, my whole social infrastructure, safety net, network, like all the people that I worked for after my first job were like tangentially connected to being there, like
in person.
Like often that's how like startups work too, right? It's like somebody from Google, for example, is like, oh, I'm bouncing, I'm going to start this thing up. And there's like 3 people they'll hire that they work with like previously in their careers. And maybe that will be the case for people that working on Discord or Slack with people that they've never worked with in person. There's a huge amount of irony in me saying this, because what I do now, like anybody I work with does not like work with me physically. And us
3 who record this podcast have never been in the same room together, all 3 of us. So I think we're kind of proving the point here that it's a bit of both.
But it is, I guess you're thinking, like the frame I'm trying to present is like when you're starting out, like some of the things you observe in person feel to me like, or felt to me as like very influential. But if that's not the structure of of work going forward, then maybe that stuff doesn't matter as much anymore.
Well, the one thing that's really well put. The couple of things I wanted to add on that is like zooming out a little bit. I think the other point here is like millennials. We were kind of like the generation that just kind of accepted what was being told to us as well. Like every generation did that before, but we were the first generation that got exposure to the internet early. We saw the world before the internet, so we were kind of this bridge where we were like, oh, we're starting to see new ways of doing things, but we're also being told, oh, suck it up, turn up at the office, go 9 to 9, put in the work that you need to put in. And most of us kind of sucked it up for most of the time, and now we're kind of passing it on to the next generation. And this is the first generation that's actually saying, oh, we don't actually want to do what they're kind of rebelling, which is actually bollocks. Kind of they're like, it's bollocks. They're like, well, wait a minute, we don't actually want to do that anymore. And it's not just in work, like there's many other things that they've actually been kind of vocal about. And a part of me is like, oh, good for them for actually vocalizing something that we all just kind of accepted. And that whole thing of like, oh, I did it, so you had to do it, that's exactly what we all don't want to do, right? Like we all said, like, why should someone now have to be an assistant for 5 years when they can actually just go and start learning from day one because they're smart enough to do that? Like, just because you did it doesn't mean someone else should do it either. But there's a bit of both in that, obviously. And the second thing I want to add is what you talked about there, Jack, about that learning in person stuff. To me, a lot of this is like what stage of your career you're in, right? And so like there's the early stages, you're kind of like learning. That's really what you're being paid for. Like you're being paid a small amount, but you're learning the most. Then you get to the next stage where you're like, that's where you earn probably the most, right? Where you can monetize your actual skills you developed. And after that, you can either go and retire or go give back or whatever, or you can just kind of coast because you've already got to a certain stage. So I think for me, the earlier stage, that's where it matters the most. It's like you do need to suck it up a little bit more because that you're not being paid for your 9 to 5 even. You're being paid yourself in like learning something that can actually take you to the next level. But that's not for everyone. That's probably for people like listening to this pod who are more like higher achieving than the average person and are into like technology and internet stuff, right? So it's very different to just someone who wants to live their life and, you know, have a kid and like live their peaceful life.
I totally agree. I was just going to say our podcast listeners are definitely, I feel they're looking more for learning and looking for investment advice. And
yeah.
Well, I was gonna say the there's some, if I'm being completely candid, there's some accountability that comes with being in a place with other people, you know, like for spending more time doing your work. Like you're not dicking around 70% of the day with the TV on in the background, going to the fridge every 20 minutes. Like
I will say the Google office was definitely a little different. I'm not gonna lie, that was definitely a lot of hanging in the mini kitchen.
I guess maybe I'm off on that front though.
You're right.
Being in a work environment where it's like you do not behave the way you behave at home.
At home,
when you're
of course,
in
you've got complete freedom.
When you're in an office with people looking at your screen, and just like the amount of repetition that is forced through being in that environment is a faster like compounding curve.
Yeah, definitely.
The one example, like the one like standout example I had of this, there's this post-production house in New York called The Mill, and they do like the most ridiculously complex CGI, commercial advertising, all that kind of stuff. You go in their office, it was in Soho, I don't know where it is now. There's like 100 workstations in there. They're all facing one direction. You get off the elevator and you look in there and every single person, there's no Facebook, there's no YouTube, there's just every single person is like Cinema 4D, just grinding it out.
Bro.
The
That's
factory.
Beautiful.
Man.
There we go.
It was so profound.
And it's one overlord
like,
just watching them all to make sure they're not on Facebook.
The guy that's walking around doing the tour that I was on was like, here's how we work in here. This is what's getting done. And maybe like that's coming from me. It not necessarily didn't have intrinsic motivation, but there's some well-documented theory that you try harder when somebody's watching you than when they're not.
That's why there's a cut
even in some.
Sorry. That's a call back there.
Well, that would be true too. I'm sure.
Yo, the pressure is on, son.
That's it. That hotel, for the people who didn't see the episode, the hotel chair facing the bed. We don't know what else it's there for except for it being a cuck chair. But anyway. But
well, by the way, I'm going to say one more thing. That there's some tweet that went viral, maybe under that video or something, but it was like, Gen Z, work to live, not live to work.
Yeah.
That's
that European living
stone on the Gen Z, you know, whatever mantle, crest, whatever you want to call it. That is the motto. So
it's like the Facebook.
Basically erase everything I just said and just put that back at the start of the segment. And there we go.
Oh, you guys want to know? I know Bilal, you've been to the full moon party, right?
Yeah. Koh Phangan, yeah.
Yo, you remember the sign there, though? Jack's thing? It's very different than what Jack's talking about, though. The sign goes, it's the
I don't think I remember a sign, to be honest.
It's the perfect night for a perfect night. And
what did it say? Say that again. It's
the perfect night for a perfect night.
Oh, there we go.
And you know that shit that goes down at the full moon party.
I was staying in a hostel at that stage, so by the time I got there, it was already very fuzzy.
Was that before or after the Heidi Klum Halloween party?
It was maybe a year or two after. So I was trying to relive my 18-year-old backpacker life, but as a 25-year-old or 24-year-old. Yeah.
You know what? We got, man, it's this look how meaty this episode got.
Yeah, just one topic.
Yeah. So let's you know what? We're getting pretty serious. Let's talk about New Yorker versus Hasan Minhaj.
Yeah, okay, let's do it. So Trung, do you want to break this down? Because I mean, I can just share what I remember from seeing the original Hasan Minhaj kind of like New Yorker piece, or you probably know better because I know you've been speaking to some sources related to this. So
I'll just like full caveat. I work with Hasan on a Daily Show segment 7 months ago. So you take that with a grain of salt of whatever bias you believe I might have.
Which is also incredible, by the way. That this one went under the radar. You just slipped that into our chat at one point. I was like, what? When did this happen?
Just like what for people, what happened was you probably know at this point if you follow that Trevor Noah is no longer the host of the Daily Show.
Yeah.
They brought in a bunch of guest hosts. Hasan hit me up to do a segment about financial grifters. And
you just know each other from Twitter? Is that where you met?
Yeah, just Twitter, the interwebs.
Amazing.
But over the summer, it looked like Hasan was going to become the new host of the Daily Show, and the writer's strike happened, which we talked about on this podcast. And it sounds like, according to reporting from Puck News, because I never talked to Hasan about these recent developments, it looked like they were withholding the announcement until the writer's strike was over, which makes sense, right? A lot of writers on the show. So last month, I don't know if you guys read this, but I know that we exchanged that. A piece came out from the New Yorker where they had interviewed Hasan Minhaj, and Hasan had said that some of his stand-up specials, he had fabricated some of the stories. Now, I want to get Bilal's view on this because I know Bilal follows comedy and the comedy scene quite closely. So I'm going to give you the objective facts from the article, which Hasan himself has greenlit.
Yeah.
Okay? So there was a story about anthrax that Hasan had said he thought anthrax had was sent to his house. There was factually true. There was a white powder sent to his house. In the stand-up, he said that it had fallen on his daughter and they taken her to the ER. That turned out, the ER part turned out not to be true. The second thing that was brought up in this article, also from his recent comedy special, was that he was part of a Muslim community in California where he grew up that was infiltrated by the FBI. And that basically the FBI was trying to flip Muslims, right? Or try to get them to show if they're quote unquote extremists, something along these lines.
We all had one of those guys in the mosque. That's why I'm smiling.
Bilal, so let me ask you, right? So those two stories, they were not word for word true. Yeah. He had said, he quoted, this is what people were roasting him on.
Yeah.
He said it was emotional truth versus factual truth. But here's the key part. The reason this is an issue, and before I hand this over to Bilal, is this. For most comedians, like, do I believe every story that Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle said word for word? Of course not, right?
Well, definitely not that Dave Chappelle kid, the baby on the corner, bro. Yeah, that's definitely not.
Dave Chappelle has a whole bit about a baby on the corner dealing crack, right?
Selling crack, yeah.
It's like the whole point is like, they're doing this for the joke, right? But the issue that came out with Hasan, and here's the whole point of this. I'm burying the lead. Last week, Hasan had recorded his entire interview with this New Yorker reporter, and it turned out that she had misconstrued quite a few of his quotes. Yeah, he brought
the receipts. You gotta love that.
He brought the receipts. But the issue that he had to address was this. The Daily Show job, which Jon Stewart had made into an institution, was about speaking truth to power, right? And that is a news political commentary show. In that type of show, truth, the factual truth, comes before emotional truth, right?
Whereas, it comes before comedy even. It's comedy. About like saying it in a smart way.
The facts. Hasan has storytelling comedy, which is his his stand-up specials. But he also had the Patriot Act, which is like the Daily Show. That's a newsy bit. So he was putting emotional truth in front of factual truth for his stand-up. So, Bilal, I'm going to hand this to you because everything I've said, hey, you have a Muslim background, that story you laughed about, like having the infiltration of the federal agents, like that's not even a joke, right? Like that was a thing.
Yeah, that definitely happened. Well, just really quickly, a third story I think was about his prom date, like
his prom date. Said no to him basically because of racism. Her parents
and it was
racist.
About a family. Apparently, had said something at the door, and so again, that came out that he basically rebutted.
He changed the timeline, but it turned out.
But again, the emotional truth was there
in New Yorker. Yeah.
And so I'll just share my opinion on all of this because first of all, I've been a fan of Hasan for a long time. I think it's like his comedy is very unique. it's definitely not like the style of comedy that I'm like, oh, he's just a pure comedian in terms of like, oh, funny is funny. Like there's certain comedians where like Theo Von, Andrew Schultz, those guys, like anything they say, I know they're just making a joke. Like Hasan is in the middle where it is like, there's a message coming through, which I've always respected. And so when I did read the New Yorker article, I was actually a little disappointed because the way they framed it, it made him out to be kind of, as he described, a bit of a psycho, right? Like as he said, who lies about their kid getting anthrax put on them? Because if you just read that headline, you're like, wait a minute, that's a bit weird. But now a lot of the people reading that don't realize that 99% of comedians, probably 100% of comedians, are exaggerating for storytelling and for comedic effect, obviously, right? Like that's their job is to be funny, and their job is to be storytellers and entertainers. So 100% of them pretty much are making stories up or like adding embellishment for comedic effect. So that's just kind of out the way. So he's not dissimilar to every other comedian out there. So I think a lot of people just don't realize that, first of all. Secondly, I think the part that became a little blurry for him was because, like you said, he's got the political stuff as well as just stand-up special. One part I would challenge him on a little bit is like his comedy specials are partly political in a way too, right? Like, because you are talking about these themes. So there is a bit more gray area. But still, regardless, the way he came out and basically Hasan Minhajed the whole thing with the slides basically, on the screen.
Well, why don't you explain the video? It's 21 minutes.
Yeah.
And
I
he
watched
goes
it
beat
the other
by
night.
beat,
it was great.
Right? He recorded the entire conversation with the New Yorker reporter. And basically, so the first thing he did was he demonstrated that the story about the prom date, he's like, well, we actually gave them corroborating evidence to show that the framing they had was actually
and they just
untrue.
chose to ignore it, basically.
Yeah. So
it
they
felt
chose
like a
to
hit
ignore
piece
it.
from the outside by this point, right? Like
Totally.
they were picking and choosing. Like, I mean, anyone writing a story does that, but it just feels a little unnecessary to be doing that to someone, like, unless there's an ulterior motive. Like, and again, I'm just thinking out loud here, but if he's got probably one of the people that might be up for this big job, right? Like,
dude, that's
who knows,
bingo, right?
There could be something there too.
Well, you nailed it. So I think you brought up two very important points. His stand-up specials, they do have a political taste. It's not just the news work that he does with Daily Show or Patriot Act, right? His stand-up itself sends messages about race, about power structure,
which is amazing. Which is powerful as well.
Totally. But to your, like what we're discussing, that's where there's this gray area, and he himself acknowledges that. He even says, like, I need to be more careful understanding that. But I think the main point here is this. The timing of this piece is so obvious that the New Yorker was carrying water for a competing candidate, right? It's just so obvious. How many other deep dives have they done on comedy acts, right? How many comedy acts has the New Yorker, with all its social and political capital? Because the New Yorker, people remember, this is one of the august institutions in American media. This is the magazine that took down Harvey Weinstein, right? So like they have serious investigative resources, legal, fact-checking, all the reporting. Why would you sick this power and your reputation, which it turns out, based on the recordings that Hasan put out, was completely misconstrued to look like a hit piece?
Definitely cherry picking, at least, right? Like, yeah.
Why would you do that? Like,
yeah, I'd love to get them to answer that. Yeah, that would be
not for a political favor for a competing candidate at Comedy Central. Honestly, right? Because this rule for Comedy Central, still is influential. Cable's going downhill, as we talked about. But hey, that seat gets paid 15 to 20 mil a year. Trevor Noah made $17 million a year in his last year. That is a very lucrative seat with a still large audience, right? The liberal audience too. So my whole question is like, Hasan acknowledges it. He's like, listen, I come off as, like Bilal said, I come off as a psycho. He said it in his video. If you just read that piece, that individual looks like a sociopath, right? But there's
and the problem is so many people have only watched that, read that, and now not watched his video, like everything in today's world, where there's just this massive gap. Like 95% of people are never going to watch that video where he clarifies, and forever they're going to have this one-liner about him, like he lied about his kid having anthrax on him. And so that is Now, I will say to him, it sounds like he's probably learned his lesson in a way to say, even if he didn't necessarily do anything wrong, in the future, he'll probably be a little bit more careful with some of those things, which is fair
here's
enough.
A larger question.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Because Daily Show is still old media, right? It's still the old establishment. Let's compare it to David Portnoy from Barstool Sports, who does not give an F about old media. He's not asking for them to crown him or give him any validation. What did he do last month when the Washington Post tried to put out a hit piece on him? He posted a video on X that got 50 million views 2 days before the Washington Post article came out.
He got ahead of it, right?
He posted the recording with the journalist, and he outed them. He's like, you guys were trying to do a hit piece on me. I have an email in front of me that you sent to one of my sponsors and advertisers for this pizza festival that I'm putting on. And he just put that journalist on the spot, completely neutered it. So,
I also love that he was putting on a pizza festival.
Dude,
so good. One bite, everybody knows the rules.
Unreal, right? So like that the article from the Washington Post, well, none of those magazines or newspapers wrote about how he raised $50 million for small businesses during COVID. They didn't care, right? He is an enemy in their eyes. He doesn't bow. He doesn't bend the knees, so he needs to be taken out. Hasan found himself in a similar situation. I'm guessing that they clearly had the tape and they have the production ability, right? Like his video is so good. Like Bilal said, he Hasan Minhaj, the Hasan Minhaj hit piece, right?
Yeah.
He's just like total Patriot Act style, right?
Yeah.
They have those resources. And, I wish they had done it. I wish they had gotten ahead of the story. Because they knew what was coming, because they had spoken, the New Yorker had spoken to people in and around him. Unfortunate, man, is like the New Yorker did him dirty. That's the end, TLDR.
Yeah.
Why wasn't this thing done on the other candidates? Where are the comedy deep dives on all the other candidates?
Yeah, I think at least within a piece about Hasan, they should have talked about other comedians do this in terms of embellishment and how it would be different. I would kind of respect the writing a lot more if they did that, and I don't think they did that from what I remember reading. Jack, any thoughts on this, mate? I know you're a fan of comedy.
This is a media game. They go direct.
Guy, so.
Yeah,
Jack, I was just going to bring up the Portnoy example. Yeah, he's in a tough spot because he's sort of toeing the line between the two. It feels like you can't.
Hasan, you mean? Yeah.
Hasan is.
Yeah, you can't come out at it like Portnoy does, but he did it under the circumstances. Did the best defensive maneuver possible, and Bilal's point is great too around whose mind is actually going to be changed.
Yeah.
Like the problem he has, I think, is that piece directly addressed the people that listen to him and respect him versus Portnoy. You're talking to people who already don't like him. Like any traditional media outlet writing about Portnoy is talking to people who already made their mind up about.
Oh, that's a good point,
Portnoy.
actually.
Oh, yes.
Whereas Hasan is actually
dynamic.
normally kind of a darling of the left in a way as well,
Yes.
right? And a lot of people that might read though New York Post is its own thing, so it's not like the New York Times it is. It's very different.
No, New Yorker.
Potentially.
New Yorker.
New Yorker,
Yeah.
sorry.
New Yorker is you're right. But Jack, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Like that is New Yorker is one of the, it's up there with the New York Times.
I for some reason just changed it in my head to New York Post, which is obviously very different.
If it was a New York Post writing that, Hasan would be totally chill, man. He'd be totally fine.
Yeah.
But one thing I'd say about Portnoy is that it kind of helps. He's got a couple $100 million in the bank, that's another part of this. I'm sure Hasan is doing really well for himself, but there is a difference when you're still playing that game. And again, I don't think I've heard a lot of Hasan's podcasts. I think he's great on podcast. Would love to have him on this podcast, obviously, to talk about a lot of this business stuff because he's actually very smart in that way. But he really is quite forward thinking in a lot of the stuff he's doing. Like if you hear him talk about it, but I still feel like he's a kind of, if there's a line of a business person on one side and a pure creative on the other, though I would argue a creative, you need to be creative to be a business person in many ways, but just in a traditional sense, he probably is closer to a pure artist versus just like a business person. So that like soul of what he does, like you can hear it in the way he describes his work, the way even when he describes in his 21-minute video, he's talking about the devices he's using as a comedian, like behind the scenes sort of stuff, and like the setup, the punchline, blah blah blah, and so you can sense that like for someone to really criticize that process would really hurt, right? Because you're not because you're getting into stuff that isn't black and white in the first place. Like that process isn't, oh, here's a right way to do comedy. There's multiple ways of doing it. So yeah, I'll just say, yeah, it's sad to see that happen. I obviously don't know him personally. Hopefully I think he'll be okay, because I think there'll be enough people that follow him that's still supporting him. But I think it would probably hurt his chances now of getting that big seat.
Oh, yeah, just to confirm, like it sounds like he is officially out of that running, according to reporting. Again, I haven't spoken to him specifically about this, but what I will say is, I mean, maybe this is one of like, we always talk about, this is why we talk about Joe Rogan on this show, right? Like the uncancelable. It's like when you still, that's the thing, right? If you, I mean, Jack is like, when Jack had 2 feet in both worlds, it's hard to straddle, right? It's like you're still at the whim of this old guard that we often talk about. And yeah, man, it was what a weird situation, dude. It was a very NIA type story, you know what I mean? It's like, do you just go completely solo, or still almost everything we talk about, right? Is like even this 9 to 5 stuff we talked about. Well, very similar in the sense of like, even just us, right? All of us remember working 9 to 5. I'd be scared to post anything on social media when I was working 9 to 5, right? Literally, like anything. I didn't want people thinking that, even the most benign thing, you might think your boss or your coworker might care, right? And like,
you have to think through a lot more around
unplugging yourself from it.
But I'm curious, like I would say Hasan is at that level now. Like he's at a pretty high level. He's in the top, 1% of comedians, tier, right? Yeah. Like of that level of, he did the, what is that? The with the
White
president, White House correspondent. He's like, there's only a few comedians that have ever done that. So like, and he's a very talented guy. I was actually, funnily enough, not a massive fan, but I was listening to the Tucker Carlson on Theo Von this morning. And I listened. I only listened to 10 minutes walking in the park. First of all, I was kind of surprised. Like it was all jokes up front. And I'm not a massive Tucker fan, but I do appreciate, he's I kind of want to know what's behind the character.
Was he throwing some good jokes?
He was throwing some. I mean, he was joking around with Theo.
I'm adding this. I'm gonna go for a walk right now.
And I was like, okay, this guy is definitely. I mean, to do what he's done, you have to be a smart guy, right? Like to get to the level he was at, and now what he's doing on X, on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, he's going direct. So I'm curious to see someone like Hasan. I'm not saying he has the same eyeballs as Tucker, the same way he had on Fox. But I mean, he's not probably that far off, right? Like, I'm wondering how it would be if someone like him just goes direct on a Twitter X and actually starts doing like that style of what he's been doing on there. And I think for him, he's probably looking at his opportunity as, well, if there's 15, 20 million a year on offer to be on TV and to get that prestigious kind of legacy thing, it obviously is going to help you, right? Like, so I understand why he would want to go for that. But he's kind of, I mean, he was already like a correspondent on there in the past, right?
Yeah.
So he's got that experience. He's done, to me, he's done enough that at some point you're going to go direct and like, I don't know if...
And become uncancelable.
Exactly.
Who else is in the running for it? Do you know?
Yeah.
Well, the guest hosted, one of them walked away was, Roy Woods Jr. He's also a correspondent.
Oh, yeah, he's funny, though.
Yeah, but he also pulled out because they were just waiting too long.
Charlemagne is doing a guest spot for it.
Is
Charlemagne the God. Yeah, I heard on Brilliant Idiots, he said, I'm pretty sure he said he's doing a guest, because they're doing probably like guest ones for now.
They're running the guest through. Why don't we do
Schultz
this?
would be good, wouldn't he? But he'd never do it.
Schultz would be.
Oh, yeah, that would be.
But to Bilal's point, he's plugged out of the system. Like
it wouldn't make sense for him, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that feels like the metric now, doesn't it? It feels like the biggest comedians in the world are in that category, I feel like.
And they just go direct,
the ones that
though.
plugged out, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, even Rogan is like, it's a licensing deal. It's not Spotify owning his stuff.
Everything.
Right. That's true. Theo Von, direct.
Incredible,
Bert Kreischer,
man.
like those guys. Tom Segura, which, by the way, I just found out Tom Segura, if you know him, is cousins with
funny
Huberman.
As hell. Oh,
know
for
he's-
real?
Yeah, he's
Hey, look at
Huberman's
that.
cousin.
That's
Wait,
funny.
cousins with who?
That's fun.
Huberman, you know Huberman Lab,
I
the
did
science
not
guy,
know that.
the Stanford professor guy, is cousins with Tom Segura, the comedian, who he's on that LA circuit, that comedian circuit vibe. But anyway,
Let's finish. Let's
Is,
finish with Netflix. That's the
Chappelle-
vibe I'm feeling right now.
Chappelle. Yeah, sorry.
There's a new
what
Chappelle coming in there.
Yeah, there we go. We're talking about Chappelle. Let's finish with Netflix.
was the Netflix one? Go on.
Well, two things. Professor Galloway had a good article about Prof G had a great article about how Netflix basically has completely bounced back and kind of won the streaming war. And then obviously I put out a tweet earlier this week. If we could throw it up, Rafa. Oh, we don't even need to. But you mentioned beginning Nollywood. So Nollywood, which is Nigeria's Hollywood, also a play on India's Bollywood.
And Pakistan's Lollywood. Can't forget about
Pakistan's
that.
Lollywood. They had
Incredible
They had
name.
their first big true breakout on Netflix. So why don't I just talk about the Black Book quickly?
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you guys seen it on the Netflix?
No, not yet.
Platform. You haven't seen it?
Did
So,
you speak to the director or something?
Yeah, man. He hit me up on the DMs, man. This is why
There
we
we go.
love X. This is why we love X. You guys get this. Something goes viral. So this film is crushing it. They made let me give it TLDR. Nigeria has the second largest by volume film industry in the world. They make 22,500 films a year in Nollywood.
What's
But
number
the-
one?
India.
Bollywood.
Yeah.
Like this is volume
Volume-wise.
of
Yeah.
number of films, not revenue. Yeah.
Exactly. Revenue still Hollywood, obviously. Obviously, also a lot of these Nollywood films are pretty low quality, right? And low quality in the sense is quantity over quality. But what's interesting is that they make so many films in Nollywood. A lot of them are under 50,000 budget. The problem in Nollywood is how much piracy there is. So these things get made and then DVDs just get copied and that's it, right? Like it's very difficult for filmmakers to make money in Nollywood, which is understandable. There's piracy in North America, right? So like, of course, there's gonna be piracy in Nigeria too. Like when I lived in Vietnam, it was all piracy. But the point is that it was hard for them to make a movie that was highly produced. And the Black Book, which is being described as Nigeria's version of John Wick, it got $1 million budget. But no one wanted to fund it because of the piracy problem in Nigeria. But they're like, wait, what if we can get global distribution, right? That fixes the piracy problem. So the director is a tech guy. He's a former tech marketing executive named Aditi Effiong. So shout out to Aditi. We chat on DMs after I did this post, and he just thanked me for it because this movie is blowing up all over Netflix. It peaked at number 3 English language global. It's top 10 in 69 countries. Dude, this movie was like number 1 in South Korea. That's Koreans
so
are
sick.
watching a
That's
Nigerian
amazing.
action movie, right? That's the beauty about Netflix. But the movie was made for $1 million, and so Netflix, this is the metric they use. They rarely release numbers, but the ones they have released is the number of watches in the first 28 days. That's their go-to metric. So I'm going to give you guys the record holders, okay? So actually, I'd love to know how many of these you guys have watched. These are the original films. Bird Box, 156 million. Glass Onion, 136 million. Don't Look Up, 171 million. The Gray Man, 139 million. This is the most watched Netflix movie ever. Red Notice. Have you guys watched that?
No, I don't. No.
What is that again? Maybe.
Red Notice has like Ryan Reynolds and The Rock.
No.
I haven't watched any of these. I watched Glass Onion. That's it. That's Ed Norton.
Shit.
Did you guys watch any of those? Those
I
are
saw
the
I
big.
think I looked,
a little bit of
Don't
that
Look
Glass
Up.
Onion, and then I turned it off.
Yeah, it
But
wasn't that great.
The first one was sick. What was that a sequel to?
Bird Box, Gray Man,
with
Don't
Daniel
Look Up.
Craig.
Yeah, Glass
No,
Onion. Yeah,
what
Glass
was the
Onion.
first one called? It was great.
Knives Out.
Yeah, that was really good.
So the point I'm trying to make though is that all these films had budgets between like 40, 50 to 100 mil, right? So Netflix, the arbitrage opportunity with Netflix and Nigerian films is massive. Man, we all know how much Jack loves distribution. How about that? You're making a $1 million movie, the distro you're getting on that bad boy, right? But let me see super quickly is some thoughts. Any thoughts on that? I don't know if you guys are going to watch it.
I wonder how their other advantage, I guess, is that they can run tests for free, basically, right? Like the ability to see if how many people watch a certain amount. It's like a less obvious YouTube algorithm happening on Netflix. So yeah, it's fascinating.
And also they'll also use, because I remember with YouTube they would test out the trailers on YouTube. I don't know if it directly correlates to budget, but like they can see like how people react to that before they put extra budget, let's say, in market. I'm sure they've defined some of that already, but I know that they were one of the smartest people in media entertainment vertical for using YouTube to streaming.
The other amazing thing about it is, like, in the context of digital advertising, like, you don't have you do have click through, but it's not like one piece of media. Well, I guess maybe it is one piece of media try and get you to another piece of media. You know, like, it's very, very clean information you're getting from, like, most people watch this amount, and then you just rocket it up to the top of the thing. Like, you know, I think they added this the last couple of years, like the top 10 films in America today. Like, you get that when you turn Netflix on now. It's like, yeah, which is a lot, like, to me, as a weird way to pick what to watch, but it seems to be working, you know?
Yeah, 100%. In a way, it's
100%.
kind of like filters because there's so much stuff on there. And half the stuff is like dating, you know, like, what's it called?
Reality.
Love is Blind and all that sort of stuff. But man, then you try Love is Blind and then you're like, yo, I get it. This is addictive. I see. This is a crazy premise, but it's an amazing show. I'm not gonna lie.
Let's talk about, though, how Netflix, you guys remember last year this time that Netflix like reported their first slowdown in subscribers? You guys remember that? It fell like 25%
and we talked about
in one
them
day.
going with ads in India and stuff like that. Yeah.
So the last year, though, and Prof G had an article on No Mercy, No Malice worth checking out. He breaks down, actually, if you look at the last year, it's become quite clear Netflix is going to win the streaming war. And the reason that is because Disney Plus, Paramount, Peacock, they're all realizing one thing. Running they had two business models. Those studios before used to just license those films, right? That's pure margin. If you make a movie and then you sell it to Netflix, that's almost like 100% margin as a secondary revenue stream, right? Outside of theaters and the original, the first channels. What happens if you're building a streaming service? It's a massive investment, right?
You go acquire customers, retain them.
Customers, keep them on, keep content so they don't churn, run the technology. All these streaming services are finding out.
You got to replicate what Netflix does, basically. Yeah.
Trying to replicate. It's extremely expensive. And Netflix could do it for basically a decade because everybody thought they were a technology company, right? Like they're FANG. Netflix was included in FANG, right? Like that's inception. Even though so much of Netflix is still just a traditional media business. But they're able to build this moat of technology, mindshare, and a catalog over the past decade because they were able to have such a strong stock price that could get them new talent and keep them, just a perception.
And it was a ZERP era, to be fair.
Yeah, it was a ZERP era. They could borrow money to build out this massive catalog, and they used capital to an advantage. They built a massive moat. Everybody else tried to come up. Yo, it's the old wire, right? Come out the king, you better not miss. And all these streaming services are finding out how hard it is.
Yeah.
And it's the best name, best brand.
Yep.
That's true.
Names are destiny, boys, as we've talked about on this pod.
That's great. Harry Styles, born to be a star.
Exactly.
Bieber.
Exactly. Like, did you watch that on Amazon Prime Video last night?
Doesn't really hit, does it?
Like
when you were telling us about
Peacock.
that, Peacock not really doing it. Not really doing it for me.
What was that? What were you talking about?
HBO still. That's what.
HBO Max.
HBO is a sick name. It's a great name, man.
And then they just got rid of it.
Just goated.
Absolutely
Insane.
ridiculous. All right, boys.
But
I think
yeah.
that was a good way to wrap it up. But Jack, did you want to talk about? Thanks for sharing that trunk. We've got for people. We'll do another episode in the future about Costco's $9 billion clothing business, the Meta chatbot character.ai. I want to talk about as well in that world, but we don't want to rush it, so we'll just save that for another week. Jack, did you want to share? You've been working on this collab, or do you want to save that for another time?
Yeah. I'll do a little 10 seconds. I could share.
Here we go. So
the name.
Jack's been working on something fun.
Yeah.
We got a little collaboration coming up with Oracle Red Bull Racing.
There we go. Yeah.
With VV
Yes,
or what brand?
Me.
The Jack Butcher brand.
How do you like that? Hey, man, which brand was it with, VV or Chex? Jack Butcher. That's who it's with.
I love when you do the geek voice for yourself. There we go. Jack, what is it? Is it for Formula One?
Yeah, Jack, say more.
Yeah. Well, I can't say that much, but it's, Formula One. They already won the championship, so we're doing something for the last
Who
race
reached out
of
to
the season.
whom?
I did not reach out to them.
With the eyes.
You guys remember that Larry King interview with Seinfeld? And when Larry King asked Seinfeld, did you get canceled or did you quit? And Seinfeld just goes, Larry, you think they canceled me? Do you know how many people watched the finale of Seinfeld? That was me and Jack right there. I asked Jack, like, who reached out to who? It's like, Trung, can we get Trung a CV? Do you know who I am, dude? Wow, that is incredible.
That's dope, man. Well, because Jack had mentioned it to me, and then I was like, we got to save that for the pod, because Trung, people who only listen don't know, but Trung is down in Red Bulls on a regular, so he's a fan.
Dude.
You know?
It's so bad for your health. No, it's not. I love Red Bull, man. No, what it's bad
It's not bad for cars' health, though. So that's what Jack could be working on.
No, it's good for vehicles. No.
Beautiful.
Red Bull's good to go, people. Okay, that's goated. So, Jack, thank you for sharing that. We look forward to seeing more in the next couple of weeks.
There we go.
Max Verstappen, always invited here, man. We got an open seat for you, Mr. Verstappen.
Open
let
seat.
you know.
There we go. Beautiful.
But yeah,
great,
boys, that was great, man. Wow. Great recovery.
Love that. Well, thanks everyone for being here. We'll save some of those segments for next few weeks. I hope you like that. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.